Title: My fiancé used me as practice, then called me abusive when I walked out. Chapter 1: The Therapy Bomb. I've always been the responsible one. The guy with a plan. The guy who doesn't flinch when life throws a punch. My dad walked out when I was 12, and from that moment on, I swore I'd never be the kind of man who leaves people guessing. I built stability out of spite: good job, decent home, a retirement fund. I thought that was enough to build a life. Then I met Chloe. She was fire to my earth. Charming, unpredictable, the kind of woman who could make strangers feel like they were old friends. We met 3 years ago and moved in after a little over a year. I proposed on our 2-year anniversary. Wedding was set for October. Venue booked. Deposits paid. Chloe cried when I gave her the ring. Looking back, I think now, those tears weren't for me. There were signs, I just didn't want to see them. Chloe's cousin Madison was one of them, a walking red flag with filtered selfies and 3 ex-husbands before 30. She never liked me. Always made jokes about how Chloe was slumming it with someone like me. And Chloe? She just laughed. That was her thing. Laugh everything off. A month before the wedding, Chloe changed. More cousin nights out. More secretive texts. She started talking about how she appreciated my stability, like I was a reliable used car, not her future husband. Then she said she wanted to go to therapy together. She told me she'd been seeing someone, Dr. Winters, to work through stuff about her ex Kyle. Said it would help strengthen our bond. I agreed because I still thought we were on the same team. But that morning I overheard her whispering to Madison on the phone, "Today's the day. I can't keep pretending." Still I went. The session started normally enough. Dr. Winters asked about our relationship. We answered. Then came the question, "What would you like to work on today?" Chloe leaned forward like she'd been rehearsing this moment. "I want to talk about my transition plan," she said. My stomach nodded. I've been using this relationship to heal from Kyle. To work through my abandonment issues before I find the person I really want to be with. I didn't even know what hit me at first. The words just floated there. Dr. Winters blinked. "Chloe, have you shared this with Alex before?" She smiled. "No, but he should be thankful. He gets a gorgeous fiancée and I get emotional stability. It's like emotional economics. We both benefit." I didn't say a word. I just stood up, nodded to the therapist and walked out. No shouting. No begging. No tears. Chloe called after me as I left the room. "Alex? Alex, wait, we still have time left." But the thing is, when someone tells you exactly who they are, you don't need more time. You just need the courage to leave before they finish tearing you apart. And as I stepped into the sunlight outside that office, I thought it was over. But I was wrong. That wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Chapter 2: The Aftershock. I didn't sleep that night. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to rest. The words she said in that therapy room echoed in loops, twisted reminders that the woman I loved saw me as nothing more than a stepping stone. Not a partner. Just a phase. I stayed at Trent's place, numb, detached, trying to process what came next. But Trent knew me well enough to let the silence work. No questions, just quiet understanding and strong coffee the next morning. By noon we had a plan. Her belongings were packed, just the essentials. The rest could wait. Locks were changed. Passcodes reset. Access revoked. It wasn't about revenge. It was about control. Reclaiming what little dignity I had left. When I finally turned my phone back on, the screen lit up like a crime scene. Missed calls. Dozens. Texts that started sweet and spiraled into threats. One after another. Confusion, guilt-tripping, blame. Accusations of abandonment. Accusations of emotional abuse. She even tried to weaponize my past, bringing up my father's absence like it was the reason I couldn't handle commitment. As if her betrayal wasn't enough, she now wanted to rewrite the entire story and cast herself as the victim. Still I stayed quiet. Instead I reached out to the vendors. Explained what had happened, only what was necessary. Most were kind. A few offered partial refunds. It wasn't much, but it helped. Not financially, emotionally. It was the first sign that not everyone would blindly accept her narrative. Then I sent the cancellation email to our guests. Simple. Direct. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the wedding will no longer take place. That was it. No blame. No mess. But mess always finds you when someone like Madison is involved. Because by the afternoon she was standing outside my condo door. Still in her Instagram perfect outfit. Still wearing that smug look she always carried like a badge of honor. I opened the door just enough to see her face, and in that instant I knew. She hadn't come to listen. She'd come to spin. To control. to convince me that none of it was as bad as it seemed. That Chloe's words were taken out of context. That therapy is a safe space, where people say all kinds of hypothetical things. But what she didn't realize, what neither of them realized, was that I wasn't looking for context anymore. I had already lived the truth. And when you finally recognize the face of manipulation, it's not just one person you start to see differently. It's everyone who stood quietly behind her. So I let her speak. I let her spin her web, smirking like she had the upper hand. And as I watched her talk, I realized she wasn't just trying to fix Chloe's mess. She was terrified I'd finally stop listening. Because men like me, we don't explode, we don't scream. We walk away. And when we do, the silence is louder than anything they can scream back. Chapter 3, The Turning Point. Madison stood there as if the weight of Chloe's mistakes could somehow be argued away by posture and lip gloss. She spoke in circles, carefully curated phrases about misunderstanding, therapy language, hypothetical healing. Her words were sharp but hollow, dressed up in self-help lingo she barely understood. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Because every sentence she spoke confirmed what I'd already started to accept. They were more concerned with the fallout than the truth. She left with one final warning: Chloe's father would be in touch, lawyers were being consulted, reputations were on the line. It was almost impressive how fast concern for Chloe's mental state turned into threats about social status and deposits. But I was ready. I'd spent my entire adult life preparing for storms, just not this kind. And when it hit, I stood still. The calls came next. First her parents, frantic and furious. Demanding explanations, accusing me of sabotage. Telling me I couldn't just walk away after everything they'd invested. I kept my answers short. Direct. They didn't want honesty, they wanted obedience. But nothing prepared me for Chloe's next move. She showed up at my office. Hair perfect. Smile rehearsed. Holding a tray of pastries and coffee like she was just dropping in on a typical Tuesday. Security called ahead. I watched from the window as she was stopped in the lobby, her smile melting into a tantrum. One second she was the sweet fiancée holding croissants. The next, she was screaming that she was being kept from her future husband. She didn't know I was watching from above. The guards gently escorted her outside. I turned away and took a deep breath, not out of fear but out of exhaustion. That kind of performance doesn't come from heartbreak. It comes from panic. Because for the first time her charm didn't work. Her words didn't land. Her face didn't open any doors. And she couldn't understand why. That evening I went to check my savings account, an old habit. I had given her emergency access to it a year ago. Only for real emergencies. $15,000. Gone. 6 months of small, silent withdrawals. The last one? 2 days ago. After the therapy session. $3,000. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. But a cold stillness settled in my chest. Not because of the money. But because of what it meant. She hadn't just disrespected the relationship. She had stolen from it. And that's when everything shifted. Not just in action but in me. I reached out to my lawyer. Forwarded the bank statements. Contacted my therapist, Dr. Winters, and signed a release to document the session. And when her official letter arrived, detailing what Chloe had admitted in her own words, noting her concern over Chloe's manipulative behavior, it became clear. This wasn't heartbreak. It was survival. I drafted one final message. No emotion. No drama. Just truth, consequences, and a deadline. Because sometimes the turning point doesn't come with shouting or tears. Sometimes it's quiet. Like the moment you realize you're not the broken one for walking away. You're just finally done being lied to. Chapter 4, The Collapse. The next few days unfolded like watching a building fall in slow motion. One lie, one reaction, one failed manipulation at a time, each piece tearing away the illusion she'd worked so hard to build. First came the smear campaign. Chloe took to social media with a 15-minute tearful video. She painted me as cold, emotionally damaged, incapable of understanding her healing journey. The performance was careful. Makeup designed to look like she hadn't tried. Strategic pauses for sobbing that never produced a single tear. She spoke of love, of pain, of my supposed cruelty for leaving her blindsided. I didn't respond. Instead, I compiled everything, bank statements, therapist documentation, text screenshots, and sent it to my lawyer, who quietly began preparing a protective strategy in case she escalated. But then something happened I didn't expect. The truth began to ripple. One by one, friends who had believed her narrative started reaching out. Apologies, regret, disbelief, and then silence from her side. because the image she had crafted was cracking. And just when I thought she might retreat, she did something worse. She showed up at my building. Again. This time it was a full performance. A banner saying, "Forever yours." A teddy bear as big as a child. Tears, real this time, streaming as she begged security to let her in. Claimed I'd locked her out. Said she feared for my mental state. I watched from a distance as the security team calmly escorted her away. But the unraveling had only just begun. A mutual friend forwarded me her dating profile, created days after the therapy session. Newly single, living my best life. A photo from our engagement party, still wearing a name tag that read "Future Mrs. Bennett." The mask was slipping. That night, I received a message from someone I never expected. Kyle. The so-called ex Chloe claimed had broken her. The man she'd supposedly never healed from. He introduced himself politely and clarified he had never seriously dated Chloe. A few hookups in college, then he started seeing her roommate, now his wife. He told me she'd fabricated the entire romantic tragedy. For years. It wasn't just me she'd lied to. It was everyone. And that realization hit harder than her betrayal. She hadn't just been using me emotionally or financially. She'd constructed her entire identity around a fiction. One that made her the victim, the heroine, the wounded soul who needed saving. And I was just the prop. The filler chapter before her real love story. But now the audience was leaving. The spotlight dimming. And the woman who always needed to be adored was left screaming on a darkened stage. Still I remained silent. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say to someone like that is nothing at all. Chapter 5. When the truth speaks louder. The lies couldn't hold. Not when reality kept surfacing through cracks she couldn't seal. Chloe had underestimated one thing, evidence. And the truth doesn't need to shout when it has receipts. I didn't make a public statement. I didn't write long posts. I simply created a private Instagram story, visible only to our mutual circle. No captions. Just facts. Screenshots of the bank withdrawals. A redacted copy of Dr. Winter's formal statement. A forwarded text Chloe sent her friend, mocking me, calling me boring but praising my 401k. A photo of the $21,500 engagement ring receipt, clearly marked. A screen recording of her 37 attempted calls in a single day. And lastly, her newly created dating profile, timestamped only days after her therapy revelation. I didn't say a word. And I didn't need to. Within hours, the narrative collapsed. People who'd once questioned my silence were now sending apologies. Even her cousin Madison, Chloe's loyal echo chamber, started to pull away. In fact, she posted a passive-aggressive message about toxic people who wear loyalty like a costume. Turns out, Chloe had been sleeping with Madison's new boyfriend while preaching caution. Irony doesn't always arrive with grace, but sometimes, it arrives with precision. As her circle shrank, Chloe spiraled. She appeared at Trent's apartment, ranting and sobbing, demanding to know why I had abandoned her. Trent, ever the calm storm, let her rant while recording everything legal in our state. She told him I was nothing without her. That I should be grateful for her presence. That I'd never find someone as hot, who'd put up with my boring engineer lifestyle. She tried to twist the narrative again, blaming the therapist, claiming she was tricked. She left in tears, after knocking over one of Trent's ferns. The next day she moved into desperation mode. A handwritten letter appeared taped to my condo door. 10 pages of rambling justification. Half apologies, half blame. She claimed we had something rare, and that she had only been expressing hypothetical doubts during therapy. She begged to reschedule the wedding. Even gave a new date. I shredded it, because I no longer needed her words to understand her. She had shown me who she was the moment she looked me in the eye and called our love a transition plan. The next morning, roses arrived at my office. A bouquet so large it barely fit through the doorway. The card read, "Forever yours. Even when you're being stubborn." I carried them to the break room and dropped them straight in the trash. My coworker just nodded. "Ex problems?" he asked. I simply said, "You have no idea." But I did. And that was the difference now. I knew exactly who she was. And I knew exactly who I wasn't going to become, just to make her feel powerful again. Chapter 6. Freedom with a price tag. I thought it was over. That everything left to say had already been said, or screamed, or cried, or posted on social media. But Chloe wasn't done. The final act came with a knock at my parents' door. She drove 5 hours to Connecticut, unannounced, holding a bag of groceries and a trembling smile. Told my mother she was worried about my mental state, that I'd cut everyone off, and that she feared I was spiraling into isolation. My mother didn't blink. She raised 3 boys after our father left. There's steel beneath her kindness. She called me immediately. And then she told Chloe something I'll never forget. My son doesn't spiral when he takes out the trash. He just gets a new garbage can. Savage. I come by it honestly. After that, things quieted, for a while. Chloe's parents, finally understanding what had happened, sent the engagement ring back by courier, along with a note from her mother. We are sorry. Chloe is staying with her aunt in Michigan. She needs help. But the money was never returned. $15,000 gone. My lawyer sent a formal letter demanding repayment. Chloe's response came not through her but through a lawyer of her own, one who claimed emotional distress and defamation. My lawyer laughed. Not figuratively. He actually laughed during the call. He sent back a folder of documentation, therapist statements, screenshots, recordings, transaction histories. The complaint was quietly dropped. We never heard from that attorney again. In the months that followed, Chloe's world unraveled in layers. She lost her job after missing work repeatedly and arriving intoxicated. She was frozen out of her social circle. Her podcast, created to talk about healing and moving on, lasted 2 episodes before she used it to name and shame everyone she blamed. Even Madison stopped returning her calls. And through it all she kept trying to reach me. Blocked numbers. Fake accounts. Emails written in alternating fonts and emotional tones, begging, accusing, bargaining, threatening. One message read, "You owe me a conversation after everything I gave you." But what she gave me wasn't love. It was the illusion of love. A performance she thought would lead to her next chapter, while I was just a placeholder between tragedies of her own invention. The final message I received wasn't from her. It was from Madison. A short note, "She's spiraling. I don't know what to do anymore." I replied with a link to a therapist directory. That was it. Because sometimes closure doesn't come with a conversation. Sometimes it comes with silence. With space. With peace. And peace? Peace was expensive. But I paid in full.